I wanted to provide some concrete examples of times when I've been managing projects but have used frameworks to elicit certain outcomes, right? And give you guys an actual tangible scenarios when that happens. And the malleable part of that is the way that I'm presenting them, I'm hoping you guys will be able to leverage for lots of different things, right, in your world, in your space. And I'm going to give you a specific example in a minute. The very first one that we talk a little bit about how it might be leveraged. Okay. That's really the goal of the presentation. We're going to cover three main things. The first one is from here to there. How are you going to get from here to there? That's the framework, right? I mean, you've got these big names like impact feasibility matrices and the Ishikawa, right? Like people are just like deer in the headlights, right? Really, what are you trying to accomplish? You want to go from a current state to a future state. How do you do that? How do you prioritize things that you've got in front of you? There's lots of different ways to do that. Do the, we did shortest job first, and the skill agile framework. So one of the ways I'm talking about it here is with the impact feasibility matrix. How do you even get to that point? Right? How do you try to understand what options you have? And then the last one is how do you do a little bit of a deeper dive, come up with some strategic options on how you go about approaching a problem. Okay? So in many cases across my career, these things have come up and I've leveraged them on projects to help get. That's what I want to talk to you guys about. What I don't want to do is say, well, Merriam-Webster defines, I've just made up my own short definition of what I think a framework is. And it's a pre-created template for logically structuring an approach to a problem. The reason I came across frameworks in the first place in my career was after I graduated business school, I kind of had like imposter syndrome. I was coming into the consulting space, and to me, just out of school, consultants have to know everything. And they're expected to come in and start delivering value immediately, or else we're going to get kicked off. And I was thinking, Monday morning when I go on the client side, what am I going to do? And so I started relying heavily on frameworks because you're standing on the shoulders of giants. Like these people, Porter's five forces, right? I mean, these people are coming up with logical ways of structuring an approach to a problem. Why can't you use that for your own devices to come up with answers, right? Kind of like the hybrid approach you're talking about, Mesh, right? Like 2001 Agile Manifesto, you've got this PMI, PMBOK, whatever. Like you've got these things, but can you take the wide swath of templates and things that we have available to us and make them work for you? That's sort of the goal. So there's three client situations that I'm gonna bring up that map to three examples. The first one was a utility here in town. It was their PMO, right? So their project management organization, and they wanted to do a maturity assessment because they wanted to get more mature. Okay. So again, this is classic from here, where are we current state, to future. Okay. And so what we did is we ran a workshop where we elicited this information, and then we used that information to come up with a roadmap to get them from here to there, and then we ended up working with them to actually deliver that on those projects that we wanted. Okay. That's the situation, right? So it all starts with the workshop. But what we're trying to get to is a transformation map. And again, call it from here to there, right? There is a current state. Okay, you're trying to get up here to some future state, and you've got a journey that you need to go on to. Okay? So what are the components that you need to make a good roadmap? Well, one, you need time. Okay? Right here on the top, I've just put years, but this could be months, this quarters. Again, you make it fit for purpose, for your purpose. And you need buckets of work. You need like themes or tracks, right, to sort of bucket up that work and say, we need to move in this direction generally, right? And at that point, you can then start populating the individual buckets where the years or the time frame meets the theme, and that allows you to show a roadmap of how you're going to get from here to there across these days. That's the concept of the transformation map. How do we get there? How do we fill that out? Well, the first thing you have to do is look at a maturity model. So if we're going from here to there, likely you're at some lower level of maturity. You want to get to a higher level, right? The very basic maturity model, and you can make it fit for your purposes. So you start basic, right? an intermediate level where you've got some standardization, some repeatable thing that you're doing. Then you start maybe automating things and putting additional governance in place. Then you can become an expert, right, in those things, and then you can push it broader across the enterprise, right? It's very general, right? This is all meant to be very generic, okay? But this is the starting point for assessing maturity, okay? So what did we do for a PMO? We took those 5 pieces and we said, okay, this is your level 1 basic, all the way up to level 5 mastery. And then we took what makes up the components of a PMO. So things like reporting. How do you report on project success, for example? What about standards? Are you using a waterfall methodology? Are you using agile? Is there a hybrid approach? Is it 2 tracks? Is it 5 tracks? What does that look like in your organization? I don't have to go through all of them, but are you using Azure DevOps? Do you have an intake portal, or is it just, tap you on the shoulder prioritization? What about your metrics? What about your value? Are you doing business cases, right? How are you tracking risk? Do you have career paths? Like, is there a junior project manager to a project manager to a senior project manager? Does that exist? Is it visible? Okay. You may disagree with how this matures, right? But you can hopefully see that it's malleable. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question. So these KPIs, who did your workshop determines all these KPIs,
or
this
is what we come to?
Or you
come to the workshop with this, all right? So this was all based on our understanding of what a PMO is, what are the components of a PMO, and if you're unsure of the situation, right? Let's say you're trying to build AI maturity organization, and a CTO comes and knocks on your door, Mahesh, and says, hey, where are we today? How do we get to some future state, and what are the components we need to push forward? Go to your co-pilot and say, what are the 12, 15, 20 components for AI maturity across 5 phases, and get your buckets, right? It's fine. These can be argued, right? You can have a workshop with a bunch of machine learning engineers and data scientists and data engineers and whoever else, and you can say, is this right? You can send it ahead of time. What do these buckets make sense, right? But you can see it's malleable. Okay. So this is what we walked into the workshop with, and the first thing we did was figure out the current state. So we talked to the entire PMO, which was about 15 project managers, and the manager of the PMO itself, and we said, okay, where are you guys today? Okay. C, current state, C. Walk through it, and as you're walking through that, you're getting a better understanding of the current situation. What do those people on the ground think? Right? What opportunities for advancement have they tried and failed? Which ones do they think will work in the future? Like you're sort of eliciting as you go through current state, not only where they are, but ideas that they have for the future. Then you say, okay, let's say 1 year from now, or 6 months from now, or whatever that future state is that we showed on the transformation map, where do you guys want to be? Okay, and that's the second part of the workshop. All of this took 90 minutes. Okay, so that's our future state. So for each one of the variables, you say, here's our current state, here's our future state. Okay, and then you have a gap. What do you do with that gap? Quantify it. So what we did was we just plotted it on there on a slide, and then we just added 10 little lines afterwards, and we said, this is a 2.3, right? But they want to be up here at a 3.9, right? Or a 4.0. You just make it up. Right? You quantify it. And after you add the lines and you do the quantification, you come up with something like this that says, here's the current state across this component of whatever you want to mature, here's the future state, and here's the gap. And then at the very bottom, you say, okay, your average across all these things, you guys are about a 3 right now. You want to be a 4.5. Here's what we need to cover. Here's the projects that we need to put into place, or here's the things, the initiatives that we need to drive forward to close that gap. Okay? And at this point, we're now able to start populating that transformation map. How are we going to do that? How are we going to close that gap? And a lot of it comes from the ideas that the people had in the workshop, right? So they thought about all these things. They're like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if we had like a skill tree for all the different types of PM levels so that we know what it takes to get from a junior PM to a PM, right? Or a PM to a senior PM. What about business case training? Because we don't do that today, right? I don't know that we need full-blown, like, NPVs and take 2 months to get something, but can we get some back-of-the-napkin math or, like, talk about value? Like, let's at least start with that, right? And so all of these things, you either come up with them after the workshop, or you, in combination with their ideas, come up with a list of things that need to close that gap, and then you sort of retroactively put themes associated with them. So all of these ideas of how to close the gap are related to people. All of these ideas are related to process. And again, this is just what we came up with based off of the feedback we got in the workshop. For AI, it could be something different. It could be, this theme is AI literacy, right? Because we were just talking about that, Jerry, right? We need a common way to talk about AI in our organization. This theme might be around technology, right? How do we advance our stack? There may be a theme around data, right? So again, you just make it up. It could be anything, right? As long as it makes sense. And once you've got that, you've got the ideas, you've sort of put them into your themes, then all you do is map the ideas into the transformation map. And this is the actual deliverable that we had for the utility company to say, like, in this process space, we think from getting where you currently are to where you want to be, these are the right things to focus on first based on your ideas, right? And then we'll be able to do some of these, and then these, and then once all that stuff is in place, you close the gap for that track. And if you do that across all those different tracks, you effectively close the gap. And you would want to likely quarter over quarter over quarter do another C versus F with the team to say, like, are we getting there? Are we closing that gap? Like, what's happening? Right? I mean, you'd want to put some metrics associated with that. But this is daunting. If I put this in front of you as the first slide, you guys would be like, oh, this is what I'm talking about. But when you break it down to the components and how you get to this, hopefully you guys can see the stepwise manner that you can use a series of frameworks to get to something that's like usable from a project perspective.
That's beautifully done. Never seen anything like that.
Yeah. It's really effective too. Like that when we gave this to the PMO manager as our deliverable before we signed a statement of work to do the project, he printed it out. He had it in his office, and I remember him telling me a story that the CTO walked into his office and was introducing himself. It was like a new CTO, and the guy's like, "So, what are you guys doing? Right? Like, what's on your plate?" He got super flustered, and then he remembered he had this like printout on his back wall with a push pin, and he just like popped it off and slid it across to him. He felt comfortable. He had a plan, and he had a timeline, and he could communicate that effectively. Right? Those are the types of things that our clients want, or that people who are heads of projects, our managers, they want to see stuff. So if you can, as a project manager, facilitate this kind of thing, then you garner some ability. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess you're overlying also the risk part of that for a change management standpoint. So obviously, theoretically, you should be able to do that, but then you're presenting also based on their organizational culture or their degree of maturity and how much they actually want to get to that next level.
Right.
Some things may not be as achievable as they would like.
Sure.
Because I had that direct example right now.
Right.
A couple of years ago, like it should take 18 months to do this. So hopefully it would take years. So
right.
well, it has to be done 18 months. And then they come to the realization that okay, this all has to happen, but we may have to look at the timeline from a risk standpoint and say we can't, as an organization, we cannot actually mature that quickly.
Yeah.
They're not ready.
And we have, as part of our firm, so I lead the delivery excellence, which is all the project stuff. We have change innovation, which is behavioral change managers, change impact assessments. Are you ready as an organization? But so I agree with you. But beyond that, the way that I usually frame these things up is, and you'll notice it's borne out in the data, like there aren't that many vibes. Like what good looks like or what mature looks like for certain organizations is maybe different than other ones. Right? They want to close this gap to be an average of, what was it, a 4.24? Right? Other companies might be fine with a 2.3, and that's okay. Right? That's okay. Some might want to just go full bore, right? All 5.9, but I wouldn't. But yeah, it really is dependent on their good are you at baking? How good are you at washing dishes? I don't know, like, come up with the components of it. Where are you today? Where do you want to be? How do you go about getting, you know, what are the ideas you have to close that gap? It can be malleable, right? And that goes back to the whole premise of this presentation.
How did you, I mean, so, but then after, once you come up with it, how did you implement it? I mean, did you have a PM who kind of took care of all these activities, and how did you see it through? I mean, after you come
Yeah,
up?
we're in consulting, so
You just
give the, we basically, no, that was the deliverable, but the workshop we did for free, because that's really important for us to gather current state information and where they want to be, because that goes directly into a statement of work for us to actually do the maturation of it. So what we did was, we said, sign a 3-month statement of work, and we'll come with templates, or we'll come with our knowledge, and we'll deliver this first chunk. If you like it, if you feel like you're maturing, let's sign the next squad, let's sign the next. That may be different than y'all's situation, right? But again, I feel like you could make a similar pitch to your manager. You were even talking about phase gates and funds on certain times, right? Hey, you guys want to mature in this space, give me a little money to get this first quarter out of the way and advance some of these initiatives, and then open up more if you feel like it's been effective.
There might be some squares that might show up in one or more of the squads. The same square.
Yeah, it's possible, yeah, and you have to do, I've done these a number of times, I've also taken this box and straddled that line, you know what I mean, like, you could just make it fit. What you want.
That's where the malleable comes in.
There you go. That's part of it. So anyway, yeah, this is just, I find this cool, and it's like a really easy series of steps that you guys can do to portray a list of things that you want to do to ensure something. All right, so that was the first one. Second one, we were working with a 501c3 organization, and they were, it's kind of hard to describe what they do. They run like Dungeons and Dragons, like tabletop games for kids with behavioral disorders, or kids with autism, or kids with, you know, some personality challenge, and they allow them to. It's kind of like therapy through gaming, right? It was a company, a nonprofit company that did that kind of thing, and so, you know, they came to us and said, hey, processes aren't great. We want to expand, but we don't know how. We don't know what we want to do, right? You come in and help us figure that out, okay? So this one is that second one, is that prioritization frame. If you've already got a list of ideas of how you want to expand, or how you want your feature set, let's say, you can just go straight to an impact feasibility, right? And I'm going to show you what that is at the end if you don't know. But this is, again, about eliciting information that can get you to a priority. Series of things again. Right, so what do we do first? The first thing we did was rose, thorn, bud. Have you guys heard of this? Yeah. So this is another workshop, essentially, or a group, you know, a meeting where you talk to people. And you're trying to come up with, okay, here's our current situation. What are the positive things? What do we like about this current situation? What are the roses? Okay. Then, what are the thorns? Sorry, it's a little bit vibrancy or saturation or whatever. I'm not sure that, but
Yeah.
the thorns are the pains, right? So what is it about this current process? The ERP, right? We were talking about how painful that was. Like, what are your current pains? And then what are your buds? What are your potentials, right? Or your opportunities, okay? So you can facilitate a sticky note session, virtual or otherwise, where you get a group of stakeholders together to talk about these things, and that's what we did. So the client use case example was this. This is an example, and these are actual stickies from some of the roses that they identified. That, you know, they think their product they have is awesome, their culture's awesome, leadership really cares about them, they're dedicated to it, but you know, we don't prioritize things well. We're working late hours. The left hand's not talking to the right hand. They had a number of systems that didn't really talk to each other, and they had to do duplicate data entry. And then lastly was, how do we talk about the opportunities? Because if you've got a diverse group of people there and they all have their own ideas about how to expand, what are some of the ideas that they might have? If you couch it in this way, you're opening up the discussion. You said psychological safety like 5 times in there, and I was thinking like, hey, this guy gets it, right? I mean, this is exactly what you're fostering with this kind of discussion, right? It's not your idea sucks and we'll never expand that way. It's just like, what do you guys like about this right now, right? What are the things you don't like, and then what ideas do you have for the future? So once you gather that, you're fostering that psychological safety if you're doing it well. Then you can affinity clustering. So it's basically taking all of the stickies and grouping them, right? Yeah. Similar to what we did on the last thing with the transformation map, right? So you've got all your roses, all your thorns, all your buds, and you want to come up with, you want to start theming them out, right? And put them in different buckets, because if you're doing this with 10 or 15 people, you're going to have like 150 of these. You can't process that kind of information. You need to talk about it in buckets, right? That's the concept of affinity clustering. And so what we did was, we didn't come up with these buckets ahead of time. We waited until the rose, thorn, bud, and what we actually did was we gave them a break. And while they were on a 15-minute break, we were affinity clustering in the background, like, okay, where does this go? And we eventually came out with this. There were a couple other buckets I didn't have on here, but there's a people bucket, right? That has pros and cons, right? And opportunities. Company, there's offerings, expansion, etc. And so after this full discussion, we had a much better idea about what are the opportunities for me. How are we going to expand? How are we going to tackle pain points? How are we going to make sure that the roses remain, right? We can talk about it. We have like a platform or a foundation through which we can discuss these things. And that's when we get to the impact of feasibility. So how do we prioritize, again, this is the prioritization equation, how do we prioritize all of the ideas that we just come out of this? Okay? So an impact and feasibility matrix is very simple. You have a list of things and you want to prioritize them. So you are going to plot them on this 2x2, where your x-axis is feasibility and your y-axis is impact, right? So in an ideal world, you would have something that is highly feasible, easy to do, and highly impactful to the business. Okay, so you'd want to be in the upper right quadrant of this. And if something, an idea, an expansion opportunity, a bud, right? If it's in that upper quadrant, then you likely are going to want to do it. And then, this swath may be a maybe, and this is probably a not. That's the concept introduction. What we did was we took those themes and those stickies from the workshop and we plotted them. The one idea they had was, hey, we're doing this for students in schools or private lessons. Why don't we do this in hospitals? There's lots of kids in hospitals that might be benefited. That's one expansion opportunity that we have. Why don't we put out, like, we have a bunch of PhDs on staff who've done like psychology, right, PhDs. Like, let's put out white papers and literatures and let's expand our brand that way. Let's get into counseling. Let's create a video game or do video games with them, like Minecraft instead of Dungeons and Dragons. How do we get them involved there? Let's go into schools. Let's go into prisons. That was an idea, right? Because there's maybe some behavioral issues and things that we can help with these games. And let's expand by growing our team so we just have more of the same. Right? So these are just some ideas that they had. We went through and we plotted them, and it's kind of like relative estimation in that, let's say we got here in the workshop, okay, and we put 4 there, right? Then after we put 5 there, somebody raises their hand and is like, you know what, like, if we're gonna put 5 there, I think 4 should really be over here, because that is not as feasible as I was thinking, based on where we put 5. So it's a game, right, to try to place these things and get consensus. You get buy-in by doing it this way on the priority list as well. So there's your 6, there's your 7, and at the end of it, you kind of end up with, all right, let's seriously look at this, let's prioritize this, go after this first, and then let's do the yellows, and then maybe we'll do the reds, or maybe we'll do this again. We'll have other ideas, and we'll prioritize other things, right? Again, it's what do we want to do? We want to prioritize something, some list. How are we going to get to that list? Let's do a rose, thorn, bud, let's affinity cluster it, let's plot it on this impact feasibility matrix, and then we have a good discussion about buy-in and what we're going to do first. Series of frameworks put together that are malleable to your situation that get you to a priority. Yes.
So after you've done this, obviously, time stamping and return on investment will probably likely creep in depending on who your public is. In my case, it's usually typically C-suite, so they're like, what's the numbers? How, we're gonna be investing in what's the return on investment, and you may have to completely rearrange all these because they wanna see value over time.
Right.
And not necessarily wait 2 or 3 years.
I hear what you're saying. So if something's going to take 3 years and like a big thing, it's probably not gonna be that feasible. It's gonna be a complex program, right? It would probably end up over here. Impact could be variable, like it could be a high revenue generator or enhanced margin. It could be bottom line cost savings. It could be cost avoidance. Like if we do this, we're not gonna get fined. It could be just productivity. Right? So there's lots of different buckets of value. Some are harder dollars than others, right? Some are soft, like productivity is a slip of the book, right? It's like, oh, we opened up 70 human hours for this thing. What are they gonna do with the extra time we're saving? Oh, they're gonna do higher value work. Are they? Or are they just gonna take like longer things? We don't know, right? Productivity to me is very soft, right? So you do have to take that into consideration. Again, malleable, make it fit for purpose. If you feel like it would be better to, once you have your list of ideas, go off and do a lightweight business case to look at the value associated with that, and then put numbers here of business value on the impact, maybe you make it more fit for purpose for your situation.
So in our case, they want clear definitions on, what do you mean by hospital expansion?
Yeah.
Give me a,
Yeah.
One
That's a
paragraph.
hypothesis statement.
Or a scope, like scope management.
Yeah, scope it. So once you get the list, once you do the workshop, you have the ideas, go off and do that. Go off and get it all set up, and then you can do something like this with better data.
I mean, we do the same thing, right?
Sure.
We're like 25 projects, what do you want to do? You only have X money, right? You got X dollars, got 50 projects, you can't do all of them. Exactly, we determine based on value and that Jason cost and time.
Sometimes it's perception as well. Even if you have cost and time,
Yeah.
it's perception. This perception is more important, usually.
Yeah. Well, so include those people, I won't go all the way back, but include those people in the initial discussion if you can, right? Because then they've got ideas, and when you're having these conversations in your affinity clustering, you're getting an understanding of what people think which projects are good, right? So you've got to facilitate it with the right group. It may be hard to get a time for 90 minutes to affinity cluster, but you get.
Hopefully people give you an honest assessment as
Yeah,
well.
right.
That's the other thing, sometimes politics are at play, so if you're in the same room, you may not go up against somebody.
What do they say, the info, is that the highest paid person's opinion?
That's it.
Yeah, they always win out.
So then that's it, let's do this anonymously, and that way no one knows who voted for what.
We do that too. I've done that before. In fact, I was telling a couple people, I was working at a building right over here through June. One of the things we did was we were looking at their portfolio of IT projects. And rather than coming into a blank and saying, okay, what projects do you guys want to do? Like, we had them submit them ahead of time anonymously, right? Or just to us, right? Then we had a list of all the projects that we wanted, and we ended up doing something similar, like a transformation map of which projects go where based on impact and all that. But it's, yeah, you just got to make it fit for purpose. There's all sorts of politics, and there's all sorts of issues. You got to kind of make it work for you. For hybrid project management approaches, right? There's all sorts of issues. You figure out what your situation is, and you make it, change it to.
Can I speak? This is Dr. Bennett. I wanted to ask a question, especially regarding digital transformation. It's one of my favorite topics. I really love the rose, the thorn, and the bud. We had like a mega project, but we were taking 60 systems and solidifying them to a single system. So it was the logistics modernization program. It was a really big SAP project, big ERP project. And we were taking them from the 80-column card format, which is what they sent the spaceship to the moon with. They were using that. And they were running the government's logistics based on their old system. And I remember thinking that group of people had an immunity to change because they were so accustomed to, doing it the old way. And one of the things I noticed our company did is we recreated that dysfunction inside of the new system, meaning that we took that 80 column card format, that punch card format into SAP. And I was like so stunned that they were willing to do it, but the government was willing to pay. So we did it their way. How is it that when we're sorting these ideas out, like the ones that you were showing us before during the ranking of priority, what was something that we could have done to say, oh, no, 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 don't do your data like this. Don't not transform it into the newest level of structured data. Don't stay with the old way. How could we perhaps have had an opportunity there to convince them to go full sail into the new environment and the new system? Um, we were uploading text files, parsing them, breaking them down for them because they needed to see that. And that card was crazy because every position was significant. Every character in it meant something to someone. So it was a large group of folk that we attempted to convince that our way would have been more beneficial and less costly to them. And I'm complete.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's hard. I mean, especially as like a consultant coming in, a lot of times you can raise things up, you talk about the pros and cons, you make recommendations, but at the end of the day, the client's gonna say what they want to do. So you document it, you put it in the RAID log or whatever, and you say like, we brought it up, this is right. I mean, I know that doesn't answer your question, it's just like sometimes you can't help people. The way it is, they're gonna get in their own way. I was with a super major downtown, and they did a full scaled agile framework transition, full business transformation. But one of the things they didn't do was sort of break it down to their operational value stream. Like, all they did was paste SAFe on top of their existing organizational hierarchy. They got some benefits out of it, I'd say, but in the long term, it hasn't served them as well as it could if they had sort of reimagined the way that they're making money, rearranged their teams and reorganized to sort of support those different value chain pieces, in my opinion, right? Am I gonna convince the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company that that's the way they're doing it? No. You know, I think the best thing that you could do in that situation is gather up all of the pain, right, and show it back to them, right? And then just say, we want to avoid this pain moving forward. And if they say the pain exists for a reason, and we need the pain moving forward, I don't have an answer. Maybe somebody here has an answer for that.
You did answer my question. You did answer my question. Basically, we did the right thing because they say they pay, so we play it their way. That's basically what it is. It's their money. It's how they want to spend it. Even if it hurts, even if they decide they want to live with that pain, it is definitely their choice. And I see where you're going with that because when they put that safe agile model on top of what exists there instead of doing true transformation, that is a symptom of change immunity. When you're immune to change, you make these decisions. So thank you. You did answer my question.
That's it, which we have in my company, but
Yeah.
I would say what I've done is I've set the rules of engagement ahead of time. Okay, we can do all this, but here's what I expect from you to be, for me to help me help you by stating at the end, are you going to authorize people to speak their mind like psychological safety? Are you going to accept the outcome, and or I can give you 2 or 3 different solutions at the end, and hopefully you'll see the benefits or there should be pros and cons for all solutions you offer to them.
Yeah.
But are they willing to, again, perception, who makes the decision? So from a race standpoint, and they even put it in a charter or something like that. Like we commit as an organization to working with this consultant, to accepting the outcomes, assuming that there will be. They don't want to just choice.
Yeah, sure.
And then, so in other words, they're paying you for a reason. And that's not throwing money out the door just to have a consultant or anything. So if they're being smart about it, they should be saying, okay, great, I'm going to use this for a legitimate reason, and I'm going to hold myself accountable as a company, even to my shareholders or my direct reports, that I'm not wasting their time. Easier said than done. ego also plays a big role in that.
Sure.
But I am a stickler for getting things signed in either a signed charter or a signed statement, even at the C-suite level. I'm like, you're all gonna sign it. You want me to manage this, for you guys, I need signatures. And that can take long to get them done. But once you've got it, you've got it.
Yeah, we actually tried that. I was running like a big data platform. We're trying to support all the different business units and functions, taking data out of disparate systems, putting it into a lake, and getting derived data by mashing them together and then solving new problems with that derived data. We found, since we were like a full-funded central IT team, that we were not getting the product ownership or the business engagement, right? They would just be like, here's our data, give us something back. And like, you can't do it that way. Like, we need to understand your business problem. We need to figure out, what system is this going to go into? What problem is it trying to solve? What's the value? We started that. We started having them, before they agreed to give us their data and work with us, a signed statement of their engagement, like a promise to work with us. You can't do it in a silo like that. So it can be effective. There's your answer. It's Jerry Maguire, right? Help me help you. That's what you gotta do. You gotta do that.
So,
Yeah.
Rami, is Activera largely in the work of going and doing these workshops and applying their Malleable frameworks to kind of help analyze what to do first, what to do next? Is that the main thing, or do you actually even implement sub-projects that come out of that?
Yeah, we'll project manage the project.
Okay.
And we'll do the change management. We have that aspect. We focus more on like merger and acquisition integration. That's one of our key aspects. And then AI and tech readiness, data and AI. So those are our main things. We have traditional like strategy consulting things, IT assessments, outsourcing advisory services, management consulting. But we aren't super hands-on keyboards. Like we have some Power BI devs. That's about as far as we go. So just think of like a mini.
Maybe a macro center.
Okay, all right. I don't know what's my time. Did I do that last one?
You have 15 minutes.
Okay, the last one
Oh,
I'll be
10 minutes.
okay. I'll be quick on the last one because it's kind of quick anyway. So have you guys, I said, who's heard of SWOT? I think everybody, and have you heard of TOES or Smart SWOT? That's a framework that we use to like get a deeper analysis. And if you're ever in a situation as a project manager where like you're trying to create the SWOT, but then you're not really sure what to do with the components of it, right? And people respond to SWOT if it's like a strategy thing. Like they know it, they understand what you're trying to accomplish. But then a lot of times they'll list all these things out, and then you're like, what do we do now, right? And that's where this next level of analysis is about. We did this for a pulp and paper manufacturer. But we ran another workshop, because we do a lot of workshops, I guess. We ran another workshop where this was actually during COVID, so we were using Mural, like the virtual stickies and all that stuff. So we had it online, and we had a brainstorming session where that were the strengths, right, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's what SWOT stands for. And what they were trying to do was have agility or agile transformation across their IT organization. They didn't really know how to approach it. They were asking us to do that. So some of the strengths that came out of that initial workshop were IT wants it. They're very interested. Leadership has heard of agile and they really want to do it, even if they don't know exactly what it is. The business units want it, and they've done it with limited success already. They had like but they've been using it in pockets, and they've seen success with. Some of the challenges were like the culture ingrained processes in the waterfall. I'm sure we all experience that. They don't have scrum masters and stuff like that, so they're resource constrained when it comes to agility. Everybody's busy. It's product owners from the business to actually provide the subject matter experts to make it work. Some opportunities they identified, the company had just gone through a reorg, so they thought like it was a good time we were talking about that with an OB, right? Like, the companies do it always, change things up, right? We'll never let a crisis go to waste, you know, they say. Like, use the fact that we just changed our business to say, hey, here's a new way of working with this new business. That's an option, right? How do we get more clear about what we're trying to accomplish? How do we do success metrics around time to value, shorten the feedback loops? If we can do this, and we think this business itself has a high CAGR, how do we go about taking advantage of that business growth that we see on annual growth? And then lastly, the threats were people are leaving, right, because they don't like some of this ingrained process, deep-seated culture. They don't like these organizational shifts. Some vendors have long lead times, so agile is a challenge because you're sort of there to be moving forward, and you get to a point you're like, well, sit here for a month while this vendor delivers this part, and then we'll pick it back up, guys. And then they did expect inflation to increase, so they're right. So the TOES concept is basically SWOT backwards. Okay, it's like I said, sometimes called Smart SWOT, right? Sometimes called TOES. But what you do is you put your goals and objectives. So this would be right around like IT, agile adoption, time to value, whatever it is. And then you put the things that you just uncovered as part of this discussion into these buckets. And then you connect the dots. Okay. So for example, you would say this box now contains your positive analysis. So these are areas where your opportunities are strong. So like, how do we use our strengths to take advantage of the opportunities that we identify? This might be a really good place to start first. Again, we're trying to figure out what to do with the list of stuff we just. This is a situation where, hey, we're really strong in this area. How do we understand? How do we use our strengths to mitigate any threats that we've seen? This is, hey, we have an opportunity, but we know that there's a weakness here. So we need to watch out for that because our weakness might undercut the opportunity. And then lastly is, this is the greatest downside, right? Like there's a threat coming, but we're weak in that area, so let's watch it, you know? So you might have to address some of those right away depending on what they are. But if you can map up the things that you listed out, then you can have a much better strategic discussion around what to do next, right? How do you leverage those things? So this is the list that we came up with, and then there were a whole bunch of these, but I only gave like one example. Didn't want to get too lengthy, but so this one would say like, let's use strength number 2. So we have leadership support. They want agile, right? How do we use that support to get good definition and clarity? Like if we think that's an opportunity and that's what's lacking in the business right now, let's get the leaders on board with what they actually mean by agile so that we can then have a successful transformation. Okay? Get them to sign off on what that definition is, right? So we know what we're working for. So again, saying how do we leverage our strengths to take advantage of opportunities? This one is, okay, we've got interest from IT and interest from business, okay? How do we use that to find unique and innovative new opportunities to tackle these challenges of attrition and recruitment? So if these guys are leaving the company because of these culture and ingrained process challenges, right? Let's go to the business, let's go to IT and say, hey, what are some cool, innovative things you guys want to do? Maybe in the AI space. And let's take their interest that they've shown, the strength of ours, to mitigate one of the threats that we've. Again, taking the list and actually making them actionable or executable. Another one would be an opportunity is taking advantage of that organizational shift in our newfound agile clarity to say, hey, this is changing, folks, right? Our culture is changing, our processes are changing. Look, here's the new definition, right? Here's the new organization, right? Don't leave. Or, hey, come to our company. We want to recruit you from university. Pulp and paper isn't that sexy, but hey, let me tell you, we're doing some cool stuff now, right? Let's solve that problem by using one of the opportunities. And then lastly, these processes lead to out-of-date cultural practices in combination with resource availability, maybe contributing. So how do we go about solving that? Maybe we can't, maybe it's a combination of some of the other things, but this is going to be, again, malleable and widely variable to your current situation, but it's a really good way of making it actionable. from your list, from this kind of choppy SWOT analysis. Okay? So this is the last slide. It's just, how do you use frameworks? You can't use a cookie cutter approach, right? Because you couldn't just say, hey, SWOT's a framework. I'm just going to SWOT everything. It doesn't make sense. It's not applicable, right? Just like you wouldn't want to use an agile project management for building a house, right? I mean, you can't build the third floor before you lay the foundation. I mean, you've got to look on the spectrum and say, what fits here? What can we do? So you don't want a cookie cutter approach. You want something that's tailored, custom built, fit for purpose for what you're trying to accomplish, and then look at like your framework repertoire or suite and apply the right things to get the outcomes you want. And it's easier said than done because a lot of times these things aren't intuitive frameworks. You see that transformation map, you're like, oh my gosh, how do I fill this out, right? But the goal of this presentation was to give you some ideas on how you go from here. How do you go about prioritizing, eliciting those ideas? How do you do a deeper analysis on strategic direction? Right? That was the goal. So we actually have a whole bunch of other frameworks that we use too, but
are you okay if we share this with the attendees?
yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
You're out. And if you guys, I've got this, I lied, this is the last slide. That's my LinkedIn. So if you guys want to, connect or whatever, and you want me to send you one of the templates, just ping me, and I'll send you a blank slide of a transformation. Right? Or I think you're sending the slides out, not the PDF version. You'll send the slides, so you guys will all have it already. But anyway, feel free to reach out anytime, talk about it. I appreciate your time.
Well,
So, thank you very much once again, Thomas, for your wonderful presentation on behalf of PMI News.
all right, one more, okay.
Thank you. Thank you for coming over and, there is, somebody, okay. Well, we are at the end of our presentations today and, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. There were some more people signed up. There are some people online. And next, in October, we're going to have some very good speakers. In December, we're going to have very good speakers. And then January onwards, we might be transitioning to Schlumberger location. Let's see, fingers crossed. But we will be having lunch and learns out here. So we're going to give some lead time to organize those lunch and learns. Origin will be more, into all that, but we're going to have lunch and learns here. So
This is the plan, so we are not yet validating
and Galleria location also is in the planning right now. We plan to launch in September. So with all that going on, please continue to look at the programs area of PMIHouston.org and please join us as much as you can. We try to put as interesting speakers as we can for you out here. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
You guys are going to the national or the global, I don't know what you do.
Yes, sir. I'll make sure,
When is
this will come up.
Where?
I'm at the pleasure.